Are you damaging your hair by letting it air dry? Let's talk about it. Hey guys, Karen with Curl House. I'm a licensed cosmetologist, a certified trichologist, and the owner of the Curl House Academy, Let's Get Growing program, and the Curl House product line. And today we are going to talk about air drying. Have you been air drying your hair, and is your hair damaged as a result? Well, that's what we're going to spend some time talking about today. There was a study that was released back in 2015 in a professional journal that essentially indicated that although using a hair dryer causes more surface damage than natural drying, using a hair dryer at a distance of 15 centimeters or about 6 inches with continuous motion causes less damage than drying the hair naturally. So in a nutshell, all that is air drying is not the healthiest option for your hair. It's better to blow dry your hair. That is what the study indicated. Have you heard that? Have you been seeing more videos pop up on TikTok or YouTube, on Instagram about the need for you to blow dry or dry your hair and no longer let it air dry? I've been seeing these videos pop up. But anyway, I just decided I'm going to pop on my channel and I'm going to set the record straight, and I'm going to tell you how I feel about air drying based upon this study. You all know when I put information out here, I do the research. I love doing the research. I love to read what the data shows. So I like to use all of that when I get out information. I'm also a licensed cosmetologist. I'm a trichologist. I've had my hands in hair. I love hair. So I'm going to take all of that and I'm going to put myself in a category of an expert. Can I do that? Can we do that? Okay, so let's talk about it. Let me briefly tell you a little bit about this study in terms of the methods. So in the study, it was 5 groups. The first group, 5 test groups. The first group was no treatment, so no treatment at all. And then the second group, the hair was dried without using a hair dryer. So in other words, it was air dried. The third group, the hair was dried with a hair dryer for 60 seconds at a distance of about 15 centimeters. The fourth group, the hair was dried with a hair dryer for 30 seconds at a distance of 10 centimeters. And the last group, the hair was dried with a hair dryer for 15 seconds at about 5 centimeters. So the hair was dried much closer. So that's just the 5 test groups. Now, even before I talk to you about the results, I promise you, I'm not going to get super science with this. I'm going to keep it super simple. I want to talk to you about the 3 layers of hair, because that's going to be important in your understanding of the results of this study. So there are 3 layers of hair in general. The cuticle layer is the outer layer of hair. This is the layer of hair that really protects the inner layer of hair, which is the cortex. The cortex is what's considered the strength of the hair. And then it's a medulla. Not everybody has a medulla. But if we go back to that cuticle layer, the outer layer of hair, even the outer layer is broken down into layers. But the layer for this study that you should be mindful of is called the CMC, which is the cell membrane complex. This is a part of the cuticle layer that's considered like the glue. It actually keeps the cuticle layers bound together. So if you think about, I always like to use an example of the cuticle layer looking like blinds in a room. Like if you look at your blinds, sometimes they lay flat. If they're closed, they may be open if they're open. So the cuticle layers kind of look like blinds on a window blind, or you can even liken it to like shingles on a rooftop, the way they lie. The CMC, cell membrane complex, again, is that layer that actually keeps those cuticle layers together. Okay, so we got that? Okay, now that being said, according to the study, in a nutshell, it is better to dry your hair using a hair dryer, using a continuous motion at a safe distance, which according to the study is about 6 inches. It is better to use heat from a dryer than it is to air dry your hair. And I thought, okay, so just thinking about air drying in general, air drying just seems like a healthy option. So when I read the results, quite honestly, it was mind-blowing to me. It was like, what? Air drying isn't safe? I know people who air dry all the time. Like, I don't get in the habit of air drying all the time, but occasionally I'll let my hair air dry. As a hairstylist, I pretty much require my clients to have some dryer time before going out, but some of them, you know, they're in a hurry and they gotta go and they go. So just on the surface, you would think air drying, that's not healthy for the hair. See, y'all know me. I had to dig a little deeper when I saw those results. And if you don't know, my other life, before being a hairstylist, I was a data analyst at a local university. So AKA, this is my thing. This is what I do. It's what I did for a living. I did a lot of research. I worked on research projects, I analyzed research. I collected data. So I like to know, what does the data say? So I did some digging around with this study, and this is what I found out. That one, in this study, the researchers really aimed to simulate daily hair practices. So in other words, they wanted the hair preparation to be similar to what we already do. Well, in this study, each strand of hair was washed or cleansed with shampoo and blow dried every day for 30 days. Let me say that again. The hair that was used in this study was shampooed, not conditioned, shampooed every day and blow dried every day before analyzing it for 30 days. Do you shampoo your hair every day and blow it out every day? No. So it definitely doesn't simulate our daily hair practices. So that was the first thing that stood out. Even as a hairstylist, shampooing the hair and not applying any conditioner, any leave-in to the hair before drying it, whether or not drying it with a blow dryer or air drying it, that's not what we do. So that really stood out to me. We don't do that. So that was, to me, I considered that the first limitation. Another limitation was that we don't know anything about the type of hair. So even though the study was based in Korea, so we can surmise that the hair was straight, we don't really know. So I wonder whether or not the outcome would be different if the hair was curlier, if it was kinky curly. We don't know anything about the hair. So that stood out as a limitation as well. And also, it was only one study, and I haven't been able to find another study that was like it. So I don't think this study was replicated. So those are three things that stood out about the study. Now, let me get on to these results. In terms of the results, I told you about the CMC layer, the cell membrane complex. That layer is a part of the cuticle layer. Now, that layer is the layer that was compromised in the test group where their hair air dried naturally. The CMC layer, again, a part of that cuticle layer, that layer was compromised. So that is what was so surprising to the researchers, and it was surprising to me as well, that the cuticle layer can be damaged when you let the hair air dry. Now, when I think about it, when your hair is wet, your hair is expanded, right? Your hair, when it's wet, it is most fragile when your hair is wet, which is why when you're cleansing your hair, when you're detangling your hair, when it's wet, you should be really, really gentle. Because although our natural hair has not been weakened by a relaxer, it is still very fragile all at the same time, particularly when it is wet. So in terms of air drying the hair, when you are air drying the hair, you do have to be mindful of that. So that is my takeaway. Be mindful of letting your hair stay wet for a significant amount of time. So when the hair is constantly wet, and when it's wet, remember, it's swollen. It swells when it's wet. So when it's wet, it swells, and it does put pressure on that cuticle layer, on the binding of the layer, and it can weaken that CMC layer, which thereby can lead to breakage over time. So that was the first thing that kind of stood out about air drying. I can see how air drying may lead to compromised hair if you're keeping it wet all the time. So what I recommend is that if you have super thick hair, dense hair that takes hours or days to dry, you may want to consider using a hooded dryer, a hand dryer with a diffuser to get some of that moisture out of your hair so that your hair is not staying wet for days on top of days. That can also compromise the health of your scalp. You don't want your scalp to stay wet like that either, because that's where bacteria and fungus will grow in damp environments. So although I do not believe air drying in general, the result of this study can be applied to everyone, there is a takeaway. I do feel like air drying is safe in general. Again, there are so many limitations to this study that I cannot take the result and just run with it. However, I want you to decide based upon your density, based upon your porosity, if you should add a little bit of heat to your hair to dry your hair. While I was in the hair salon and my clients, most of them, they didn't stay under the dryer for 1 to 2 hours for their hair to dry, particularly those with really, really dense hair. Oh no, they may have sat under the dryer for about 30 or 40 minutes and then they left and let it air dry for the rest of the day. That is an option. That is really what I recommend. I also like applying heat to the hair depending on the style, because many times when you have styling products in your hair, the heat can actually react to that styling product, and it will many times get firmer and it will lock in that style when you apply heat to the hair. So that's another thing to consider as it relates to air drying your hair. So again, if you are someone who lets your hair air dry and if that has been working for you, do what works for you. If you feel like you're someone who's air dry the hair and you can't figure out why your hair is breaking, then try it. Try adding a little bit of heat to your hair to see if it makes a difference in the overall health of your hair. So I'm not dismissing what the study said. I'm just looking at it at a more holistic place as opposed to applying it to everyone. Now let's go over to the blow drying, because believe it or not, the study also said that blow drying can also compromise the cuticle layer. That's what is most contradictory about the study. That using a hair dryer actually causes more damage to the surface of the hair. So many times when you're using a blow dryer, if your blow dryer is up too hot, if you're drying your hair and it's a ton of steam coming out, the dryer is too hot, it's placed too close to the hair, and it may be too close to the scalp, that can compromise the health of your hair as well. So the study really encourages you, when you're drying your hair, use it at a safe distance to dry the hair. Don't have the dryer up super hot. You can put it on a cool or medium setting and do continuous motions. So in other words, don't just place it in one spot. Continuously move that blow dryer to dry your hair. So at the same time, many people think blow drying is just horrible. Don't put any heat to your hair. Well, I don't think that's true either. You can apply some heat to your hair to get your hair dry. That is okay too. You can use a hand dryer, you can use a hooded dryer. The goal is, again, make sure a hooded dryer, the air naturally circulates, whereas a hand dryer, you have to move your hand around. So you can apply heat to your hair as well. Ultimately, you have to figure out what is going to be best for you. Again, I always recommend that you go back and think about the things that you've been doing with your hair. If you feel like you are someone, particularly someone with super dense hair, and you let your hair air dry for days and your hair just doesn't seem as healthy as you think it should be, maybe you should consider drying the hair a little bit before letting it air dry all day. That's an option for you. So think about these suggestions and determine what is going to be best for you. Air drying or blow drying, I feel both of them are safe, but consider what is going to be best for you. Okay, guys, I hope this video made sense. This is a different type of video than I normally do, but I just started studying this topic and people have been asking me about it, and I just wanted to share my thoughts with you. Okay, guys, if you like the video, give me a thumbs up, like the channel so that you do not miss a video in the future. And until we talk again, stay fabulous.